The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Well, good evening. I want to welcome you to this week's episode of the Fireplace Show. The Fireplace Show is sponsored by CVC Success Group. And our mission in doing the Fireplace Show broadcast is to share with consumers of America issues, problems, things about their fireplaces, things about their chimneys that we can help them with. And a lot of weeks we answer questions that have come in from viewers, other things. And if you have a question, Mike, feel free to flash it up into the chat bar. Love to be able to communicate with you and love to be able to help you out. If you got questions about your fireplace, your chimney, your gas logs, any of your hearth appliances. My name is Jerry Isenhour. I am the founder of CVC Success Group and the president of the company. And I really enjoy being able to speak with American consumers in this manner. And tonight we got a special show because we're going to talk about the history. That's right, the history of fireplaces and chimneys in America. You may hear some astounding facts and things that have been in the development stage for the fireplace, the wood stove, the chimney that you have in your own house. So stick around with us. We're going to be back in just a minute and we'll rock and roll with tonight's show. So appreciate you joining me. I'm going to bring up some pictures in the background so you can see what we're talking about tonight. Like I said, what we're going to talk about is give you a little bit of history lesson into chimneys and fireplaces in America and even a bit further back than that. And this is actually part one because we'll do a continuation of this show and bring you on forward into the 21st century in a future show. But what you're looking at right now, and a lot of people may not be aware of this, you're actually looking right now at a picture that shows the evolution of fireplaces and chimneys in the United States of America. And you're also going to see some things from European countries. So when you look at this, this may look a little bit odd to you because what you're looking at on the left is a wooden chimney. That's right, because our ancestors, as they were building across America, would commonly build a chimney, believe it or not, out of wood. And what they would use in between the timbers they cut down was going to be mud, it was horsehair, it was straw, it was other things to build that chimney. And this was really common. And why was that? Well, there weren't any building supply houses. There weren't any masonry yards. As our forefathers started across this country, there wasn't anything for them to build out of. So they had to use the materials that were available to them where they were settled into. Remember, they were traveling across our great country in Conestoga wagons, and they had all their possessions with them. So once they got there, they had to use the materials that were available. Well, slowly and surely, we transitioned that around the first of the 20th century, all of a sudden, the standards, the codes, other things became where we outlawed the wooden chimney in America. And we started building our chimneys out of brick, out of stone, non-combustible materials. Even though these materials had been used before, this became the recognized way to build a chimney. But then as we look to the right, what do we see? We have reverted back to wooden chimneys. They might be covered with vinyl siding. They could be covered with cement board, could be covered with any number of things. Because later in the 20th century, a gentleman by the name of Robert K. Thullman, who was a researcher for the United States government, came out and invented what is called the factory-built fireplace. The factory-built fireplace also goes by other names. It is called a zero-clearance fireplace. It also is commonly called a prefab fireplace and even a prefabricated fireplace. So there's a lot of different names. But what we see in the United States today is the factory-built fireplace. The chase, which is the fake housing that surrounds it, is now a common way that fireplaces and chimneys are added to modern homes in today's construction. But if we go back again, when we first started building chimneys in America, they were commonly built in the center of the home. And like I said before, all of them weren't built out of masonry materials. Commonly, they would build these chimneys out of wood. But what happened here was they found out that masonry construction, it was a lot more fireworthy, it was a lot more fireproof, so they went to that. So these chimneys, they removed the smoke successfully. They concentrated the heat primarily for cooking purposes, because with a fireplace, you were only getting heat in one direction. And they also took up a lot of space in the home, and they were kind of difficult to construct because people didn't have the masonry skills to do a lot of these things. And again, if we go back further, chimneys actually started appearing in the 12th century. So as we go into the 14th, the 15th, and we grow forward, most of the chimneys at that time were built in a round shape. If you look on a lot of older historic buildings, if you go to castles in Europe, you'll find that many times the chimney is not square or rectangular. Rather, the chimney is built in a round pattern like you're seeing here. These were common in 14th, 15th, 16th century as far as the history goes. If we look into our European forefathers, they invented something in Northern Europe that was called a masonry heater. And these masonry heaters were put in the homes, and they heated on these. They actually cooked on these. They had ovens in the center. And lo and behold, they even used these to sleep on them. So the top of the stove could commonly be used as a bed because it was pretty cold up there in Northern Europe in those days, and they didn't have any central heat. They didn't have any way to keep everything warm. So again, showing you some of the history, and masonry heaters are actually still produced today. Masonry heaters are a real great item to have in a lot of houses. So you will find a masonry heater in some houses. And the great thing about a masonry heater is a masonry heater can be fired once or twice a day. It stores the heat up in it and slowly releases it out to the room to heat the home. The bad thing about a masonry heater, it can take 24 to 48 hours for a masonry heater to actually start producing heat. So again, if we look at it, wood was actually disallowed in the year 1909. So up until the year 1909, we really didn't address the use of wood as building a chimney in America. But in 1909, there was a handbook of fire protection called the Crosby-Fisk Handbook of Fire Protection. And whenever this book was published, they came out and said, this ain't good. We need to be building our chimneys out of something that is non-combustible. In other words, it doesn't burn. Now, if you look at that chimney in the photo, notice that towards the bottom, it's made out of wood. But then what do you see it's made out above there? That is a thatch material. Again, it's all kinds of different materials that were used to exhaust the smoke up. And I want you to notice there, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but you'll see there's actually a tree limb, leaning up against that chimney. And I'll tell you in a little bit about the purpose of that limb that's leaning against that chimney. So as we went on in through the 1700s, people started changing the way that they were building their chimneys on houses. They started putting them on the outside of the house. But what they had here was they had a chimney that was not well designed. It smoked a lot, lost a lot of smoke into the houses. A lot of problems came about from this type of chimney. So we kept advancing forward, and I could go in some real deep details, but it's probably more than you really want to know in a consumer-based show for this. So what you're looking at here is we kept going forward. We had chimneys that had offsets built into them and offsetting the flue system to get it away from that outside wall. Well, what this created was a lot of areas inside the fireplace that gave us what we call in the industry turbulence. And turbulence is a bad thing because turbulence, just like if you're flying on an airplane, is not pleasant. Well, turbulence in the smoke path will cause problems. It's going to cause the unit to not draft properly. So in today's homes where we don't have much air, this can create a lot of issues. So one of the things that we look at in modern day technology is we want to make sure that we have a chimney that's going to perform properly and it's going to exhaust the smoke from the room so we don't have smoke coming back into our living quarters. And this is a really interesting photo because, again, it takes us back into history. So what did they do when they built these early chimneys? Well, you're looking at it. So what they did, they built the outside of the chimney was built out of logs cut there on the site. As I'm talking about this, can you imagine Abraham Lincoln chopping some of those logs with the axe that he had sharpened up? Well, then, in order to make a flue system where the chimney didn't burn, they would take a large log and suspend it from a tripod stand, just like you see there. And then they would pour mud, horsehair, other non-combustible material, with the horsehair being filler. It could be straw, could be other things that they mixed in with it and poured around the log. Once this material hardened, they then pulled the log out of the chimney, and that left us with a round flue for the smoke to go up. Again, it's just part of the history. But again, 1909, that's when we outlawed wood chimneys in America. And what you're looking at here, you can see that the chimney itself is built to lean away from the house. And you also see there's a big pole sitting there. So what's the purpose of that pole? The purpose of that pole is that if the chimney caught on fire, the guy that lived in the house went out and kicked the pole out from under the chimney. Once he kicked it out of the way, what happened? The chimney, the fireplace, it all caved over and went away from the house because there wasn't a 911 to call. There wasn't a fire department to call in. There wasn't a fire brigade there or anything else. So they actually kicked the log out from under. So again, the chimney was built to lean away from the house. It was braced up with a pole. And if the chimney fire occurred, what did we do? We kicked that brace out of the way. And what did that do? That allowed the chimney to fall away from the house. So you're looking at a picture right now and at Fort Dobbs, in Statesville, North Carolina. And what they've done at Fort Dobbs, they have reconstructed military housing like was used in the French Indian Wars hundreds of years ago. And you can actually visit this. And it was a very educational trip for me because I was able to see up close and personal how chimneys were built hundreds of years ago using the materials that they could harvest from the land. So again, you're looking at log chimneys, and we have mud in between them that's chinking up and filling up the cracks, those type of things. If you look right there, you can see that the chimney is spaced away from the house. Remember, part of the system was here that if it caught on fire, they actually pushed the chimney over, took the brace out so it would fall away from the house. And that's what the fireplaces looked like inside the house. You can see they were rough cut. You can also see that there's logs right at the opening of the fireplace and right at the top of the opening. That's what we call the lintel. And in these older fireplaces, they actually used a wood beam to support that lintel area to support the chimney above it. Looking up into the chimney, you can see that we actually had wood inside the chimney is what you're looking at. Now, how were they able to do this safely without burning houses down right and left? Well, they had a tremendous amount of cooling air that went up that chimney. So we didn't have that hot of fires. Remember, we were primarily using these fires to cook on. So these fires were not really large, extreme fires like you may have in a fireplace today. It was primarily made to cook the evening meal, was the purpose of the fireplace back in those days. So again, there's another picture of that older structure, and you can see there's a log leaning up against that chimney. And again, the purpose of that log was if the chimney caught on fire, we were going to kick the stick out of the way, chimney falls away from the house. How about that as a fire prevention measure out there? But if you keep your eyes open, you may actually see these type of chimneys out in the real world. The chimney you're looking at right now in that building is found in Kentucky. It's on an historic site. And on that chimney, we can see that the bottom part of that chimney is built out of stone. But if we look at the upper parts on that chimney, it's actually built out of wood up there. Again, using the materials that we had. Well, this gentleman right here, this gentleman's name was Benjamin Thompson. And Benjamin Thompson became known later as the Count of Rumford. He was named this by the Queen of Bavaria, and Rumford was the area of Massachusetts that he was born in. So Count Rumford actually fled the United States in 1776. He went to England. And the reason he went to England, he was considered to be a spy, and a spy for the King of England at that time. So he fled the United States. But once he went to Europe, he became a very noted researcher and actually did a lot of design work and published his findings back at the time he was living. And these are the findings of Count Rumford that many fireplace builders subscribe to today to build very efficient fireplaces. So Count Rumford was also a man of science. He studied the nature of heat. He discovered the molecular motion. Count Rumford actually invented the coffee percolator. But what he did is he applied his knowledge to the fireplace. And what he did was he made a lot of changes in the way fireplaces were designed and passed this along to what was considered uneducated masons in their day. Remember, these guys did not have grammar school. Most of them never had a formal education. So one of the things that Count Rumford did was he took his findings and published them in such a way that the uneducated masons of the day could follow his findings and what they were doing. And Count Rumford, he was a leading source of knowledge in the study of insulation, pneumatics, laminar airflow, and so many other things. He was realistically a brilliant man at his time. And like I said, he lived in Europe. He actually developed recipes to feed the poor back in those days. It's a very interesting saga if you read the life and times of Count Rumford. I recently had a couple different books I've gotten on Count Rumford. There's a Rumford cookbook. And like I said, Count Rumford worked a lot to help feed the poor and invent recipes for feeding multitudes of people with different types of soup. And to be honest with you, read on what he did. He watered down the soup was what he did. So he had a little bit of flavor and a little bit of nutrition, but a lot of it was just water from what I saw and learning about Count Rumford. Count Rumford also made a Rumford furnace, and this was used for making lime from limestone. But Count Rumford designed a fireplace that was rather unique. The picture on the right is a side view of a Rumford fireplace. And what you can see how the back wall is very straight. And that was one of Count Rumford's beliefs. If you look in most masonry fireplaces that come out that are built in homes today, the back wall many times will curve and have a bow into it. And then he also worked at the sizing of the throat. The throat is where the firebox ends and goes into what we call the smoke chamber and the flue area. So Count Rumford did a lot of research about restricting that throat in order to make the fireplace perform better and use less air and radiate more heat into the room. That's a view sideways. On the left, you're seeing the Rumford fireplace, and on the right, you're seeing a conventional American-built fireplace that we've seen in the last 50 to 75 years in America. So the Count Rumford fireplace, what it did, it was a better operating fireplace than what was found otherwise. It radiated more heat into the room, and it also took less air out of the room for combustion. So in today's world, as people diagnose performance problems in fireplaces, we also teach them the Rumford principles, because the Rumford principles will often solve a smoky fireplace and make make the fireplace perform and produce more heat into the room. And there's a lot of people across the country that can do these type of retrofit installations for you. So what did the Rumford principles count here? They counted that at the front of the fireplace, usually in most fireplaces, there's a flat bar on the front. That is called the breast area, and it's also called the lintel area. So what he advised was that we needed to round that breast so the air had less turbulence to flow in. He also specified specific shapes for the fireplace opening. He specified that the fireplace would be as high as it was wide. In other words, the opening would be square. If it was 36 inches wide, then the fireplace needed to be 36 inches tall. This was part of the Rumford principles of what he designed. Now, these are some of the other researchers of fireplaces over history. If you look right there, one of the famous men, one of the fathers of our country, Thomas Jefferson, he was also a fireplace designer. Other researchers, Thomas Danforth, Brest Orton, different people have written a lot of technical papers and different things about the operation and the construction and design of the masonry fireplaces. So those of us who are really into fireplaces and making fireplaces perform, making them efficient, these are the things that we study to learn more about our craft out here that we work with every day. We work with the principles of pneumatics and we streamline the system. And what does this mean? We want to make a system that the smoke can travel from the fireplace to the top of the chimney in the most non-turbulent manner as possible. That's part of what we're going for here. This is the actual dimensions of the Rumford fireplace. If you look at the drawing to your right, you will see that in there you see the design of the Rumford fireplace looking down from above. Right beside it, you see the modern fireplace. The Count Rumford fireplace is very shallow. It also has sidewalls that have a different angle than you see in most fireplaces. The actual angle of this is 135 degrees. And why is this so important? Because it gives us a fireplace that radiates heat into the room instead of bouncing off the other side of the fireplace. So you can see on the diagrams you've got there, because the heat from a fireplace is the heat that is reflected off of the back wall. Now, in later years, there's a gentleman named Rosen, and Rosen has come up with a lot of new designs. That's actually, his design is marketed by a lot of people. There's fireplace manufacturers that are using the Rosen design out there. Another gentleman in the present day, his name is Chris Pryor. Chris Pryor has also invented a firebox design called the Pryor Fire that we did a previous Fireplace Show broadcast on about a year ago. So the Pryor Fires are now starting to take off. We have Bell Fires units, we have Pryor Fire units, we have Aaron Fire units. There's a lot of different designs for masonry chimneys and fireplaces that's built in the real world today. So again, more and more, and this is something that your technician should be aware of. If you have a chimney sweep, a hearth technician, a wood stove installer coming to your house, the things I'm talking about, they should be knowledgeable and be able to discuss these things with you when they come to the home and come and search it. Okay. And even today, we actually still have Rumford designs. Superior Clay is a company that manufactures flue lining and clay products. And they actually sell a Rumford package that can be bought of the Rumford components to build a Rumford style fireplace can be purchased. And a skilled mason many times can build these type of fireplaces. Again, the Rumford fireplace, the Pryor fireplace, the Aaron's fireplace, the Bell Fires. There's a lot of different designs that are available today to help you have a fireplace that is much more heat productive, that will use much less air and give you what I would call the 21st century and performance. Okay, the 21st century performance. That's what's out there. Okay, now this is the whole thing. Most technicians are aware or should be aware of the Rumford principles. Okay. So tonight, what I've done, I've shared with you a little short, brief history that we call part one. Okay. Next time we get together, we're going to do part two. In part two, we're going to start off somewhere in the 20th century, and we're going to talk about something called a manufactured fireplace. It also is called a factory built fireplace. Other terms for this are the prefab fireplace, the prefabricated fireplace, the zero clearance fireplace. It has a lot of different names, but I'm going to take you from when a gentleman invented this fireplace back in 1952 and how it has taken over the fireplaces that are put into modern homes today. So anyway, this has been not a real lengthy show. Try to keep these kind of brief. Like I said, what we want to do is share information with you in our show that can help you understand the fireplace in your home. And one of the things to remember is your fireplace, the chimney. The National Fire Protection Association recommends that you have your fireplace, your chimneys shall be inspected on an annual basis. So if you're watching me tonight and you haven't had that chimney, that fireplace inspected this year, your wood stove, maybe it's time that you dug down, made that phone call, and got you a competent person to your home to help you ensure that your fireplace is operating at the right level. So this is going to end tonight's show. Again, this is the Fireplace Show. It is sponsored by CVC Success Group, and my name is Jerry Isenhour. You're seeing my email address on the screen right now. And if there's any questions that we can answer for you about your fireplace, about your chimney, your gas logs, your wood stoves, hey, feel free to send them to that email address. I'd love to be able to answer them on a future episode of the Fireplace Show. And with that, we'll see you later. Hope you're having a great evening. And I hope you're sitting right now in front of your fireplace enjoying this nice, pleasant evening that we're having right now. Hope you have a great day. Appreciate it. And we will see you on the next episode of the Fireplace.